Marg Tyshawn stood on the threshold of a world few truly understood. An anthropologist and representative of the Settlement and Education Councils, she had been sent to Jeep, short for Grenchstom's planet, to confront one of humanity's most unsettling mysteries. Jeep had once been a thriving colony, settled centuries ago, but all contact had been lost. In recent years, the Duralium Company had set its sights on recolonizing the planet, hoping to exploit its resources. Their efforts, however, had been shattered by the Jeep virus, a native contagion that killed all the men and many women from the initial company expedition. Now, the survivors were stranded, trapped behind a planetary quarantine, unable to return to Earth. The company's military and technical forces, particularly the armored security personnel known as mirrors, named for the mirrored surfaces of their combat helmets, had grown increasingly desperate and isolated at Port Central, their foothold on the planet. Into this tension, Marg entered, bearing not only her training but also an experimental vaccine. She was tasked with two missions: to test the vaccine's effectiveness and to study the indigenous cultures that had somehow adapted to the virus. Soon after departing Port Central, Marg's journey was violently interrupted. She and her escort were attacked by the Mirrodin, a nomadic warrior society descended from Earth's original colonists. In the chaos, her companion was killed, and Marg was captured and enslaved. Life among the Mirrodin was brutal and uncertain. As an outsider, she was treated with suspicion, yet through determination and resilience, she began to learn their ways. Among the Mirrodin, she met Yuthn, a young warrior who, unlike others, showed her moments of grudging kindness. Marg observed their culture, the rituals of belonging, the traditions of survival in an unforgiving land, and heard whispers of deeper mysteries, the practice of deep search, a kind of disciplined inner exploration, and the importance of deep names, the layered identities earned through experience. Despite her growing understanding, Marg knew she could not remain a prisoner. With Yuthn's help, she escaped during a raid, risking everything to reach the settled farming community of Alphas. Winter on Jeep was merciless. Marg staggered across the frozen plains, barely surviving long enough to collapse at the gates of Alphas. There, the townspeople, wary of outsiders yet compassionate, took her in. Under the guidance of the wise woman the Nike and the support of her new family, Marg began to heal. She chose to stop taking the vaccine, accepting the Jeep virus into her body. In doing so, she discovered the truth that had baffled the company: the virus was not merely a disease but a fundamental force of adaptation, changing the human body to survive on Jeep. Marg learned that conception among the women was possible through processes no longer fully understood even by the natives, but which continued generation after generation. As she healed, Marg grew close to Nora, a potter whose quiet, enduring presence became a source of strength. She underwent a ritual deep search, embracing her past, her grief, and her potential, and emerged with a new deep name, Marg Tyshawn Kess. She had become one of them. No longer an agent of the company, she was now a daughter of Jeep. But the world outside Alphas was far from safe. The Mirrodin were not the only nomadic force moving across the land. Far worse were the Acraid, a fanatical and violent group led by those like Yuthn, now transformed into something unrecognizable. Believing herself to be the death spirit, the embodiment of apocalypse, the new Yuthn led the Acraid in brutal raids across the settlements, destabilizing the fragile balance Jeep's societies had built. Marg, now a vieira, a traveling wise woman, journeyed from village to village, trying to heal old divisions and prevent the spiral into all-out war. Meanwhile, Port Central had fallen further into desperation. The company leadership, unable to find a solution to the virus and convinced the vaccine had failed, decided to cut their losses. From orbit, they destroyed the space station that had once linked Jeep to Earth, severing the last direct tie to the home world. The survivors, Marg, the villagers, and even some disillusioned mirrors, were now truly alone. Recognizing the coming danger, Marg rallied Jeep's scattered peoples. She brokered fragile alliances between farmers, sailors, nomads, and warriors, urging them to see that survival depended not on domination but on cooperation. As Yuthn and the Acraid prepared a devastating campaign, Marg acted decisively. She confronted Yuthn, ending the cult of death before it could consume all hope. It was not easy, no one emerged unscarred, but Marg's leadership prevented catastrophe. In the aftermath, Marg and her companions dismantled the remaining company infrastructure. They chose to rely on their own ways rather than the broken promises of the past. Though they knew the company might one day return, stronger or wiser, they faced the future with a new sense of purpose and identity. Marg returned to Alphas, to Nora, into a life she had never imagined for herself at the start of her journey. No longer an outsider, no longer merely a scientist, she was part of Jeep's living story, one thread among many, woven into the ever-evolving fabric of a world that had endured loss, transformation, and rebirth.